I know that hoof looks big, but the camera is not doing it justice. By the end of this video, you'll see a comparison and realise just how huge that hoof is. It really was colossal, and there was a massive crack right up the frontal wall of this cow's hoof. This is the Hoof GP. Putting my hand inside this crack in her dorsal wall is not just for the camera. I need to find out whether or not it's open inside, and cutting away this loose flap really helps me to do that. Clearly this hoof is exceptionally overgrown and has real problems lurking beneath. The inside claw right now doesn't look all that big, but just try to envisage and really take in how much I'm removing from it. This hoof is overgrown, but because the outside claw is so vastly overgrown, it looks like it's in fairly good condition. Truth be told, it is in good condition, it's just a little long. And now that this inner claw is balanced and trimmed up, we can move on to the daunting task of tackling this lateral claw. Now this one really is a graphic trim. We make every attempt possible not to cut into any live tissue. But as this trim progresses, you're going to see that the inner portion of this cow's hoof is completely and utterly disintegrated. The detached flaps of hoof capsule and compacted muck are all that is hiding the interior open parts of this cow's hoof from the elements. As I work with my grinder, I aggravate the lesion within, and that is what is causing it to bleed, not any particular cut. For now, I've taken away what I can with the grinder. Now I need to use the blade of my knife to remove as much of this detached hoof horn and muck as I possibly can. Clearly this is far from a standard trim. On trims like this, on cows' feet that are as bad as this, you kind of have to feel your way through it. You gently work your way from the outside inwards, so you wouldn't cut straight into the middle of a dark part. You work from the edges and remove what you can, being as delicate as you can. Right now I'm washing it out and using my fingers to agitate the muck to get as much out of there as I possibly can so that I can see a little more clearly. The interior anatomy of a hoof like this has completely altered. It's not standard issue, so you'll see me rotate between the knife and the grinder. Right now I can see I can remove more with the grinder, and that speeds things up for the cow. I don't want her in my crush for any longer than she absolutely needs to. Again, I work around the edges towards the middle of the lesion, being as careful and gentle as I can be. Believe it or not, the grinder can be incredibly careful. I'm so used to using this tool that it's like an extra limb. We all know this outer hoof wall is incredibly hard, and I hate having to put so much force through the knife, potentially aggravating the cow even more. But as you can see, she is not upset. She's behaving exceptionally well, in fact a lot better than I would be if I were in the crush dealing with this. I continue to work my way around the edges of the lesion, taking with me as much of those cracked and loose portions of horn away as I possibly can, while all the time trying to avoid the bulbous growths that we can all see projecting from her hoof. There's no doubt about it, I'm aggravating this hoof, and I know I am. I'm not cutting into the tissue, but just being in close proximity to it and putting force through these hoofs is enough to make it bleed. We know she's going to need a block, so we tidy up that inside claw and get it as flat and level as possible, ready to take a block. Now that we've progressed through the trim a little more, I can tell the lateral claw is still oversized, so using the grinder, I reduce it a little more. We glue the block in place and the cleaning continues. I want this area as clean as I can possibly get it, so that she has the highest possible chance of a full recovery, although admittedly her chances are slim. If you watch the knife closely here, you'll see me put my hook in at the edge of the hoof horn, pulling away from that open portion of corium, trying not to make any unnecessary cuts. There are many times throughout my videos on YouTube that blood appears, and I worry that people think it's because I've cut into flesh or tissue that I shouldn't have. This is easily one of the bloodiest videos I've ever posted, and if you think I've cut into tissue or flesh at any point in the video, tag me at the time of the video that you think I've done it. Review it before you do though, because I'm sure I haven't, which admittedly can be hard to believe when there's so much of the red stuff floating around. We're getting close to the culmination of this trim. I pull out the grinder and work my way around the edges to smooth off what I can of the sharp remaining hoof horn, to close in lesion and to make sure that every raggedy part of hoof horn has been detached and her chances of a full recovery are optimal. On this particular trim, believe it or not, I can't remove as much hoof horn as I would like. There is blood, and I don't want to make it any worse than it already is. I think I've done the best job I possibly can without going too far. Again, we go back to cleaning the hoof once again, flushing out the slurry and manure that's hanging around the area. This is the hoof before we started. It was colossal, and on the right hand side, believe it or not, we're actually closer in. And this is how she's looking now, soaked in iodine and ready for a salicylic acid wrap. This iodine and salicylic combination should completely dehydrate the exposed portions of tissue and hopefully shrink and shrivel them up so that they can begin to form a layer that new hoof horn can grow and formulate healthily underneath, and at least put her on the road to recovery. This is a cow we will need to revisit, and for that you'll need to make sure you've subscribed.